In a world where ambition can lead to great discoveries, Thalion stands alone in his makeshift laboratory. As lightning flashes outside, he nervously mixes the final ingredients of an elixir that promises immortality. Rejected by his peers at the Academy of Magic and Science of Lysoria, he feels the weight of his dreams pressing down on him. Yet, as the elixir glows with potential, hope ignites within him. But a dark thought lingers. Who else might seek this power? And what dangers could follow? In the heart of a storm, Thalion stood alone in his makeshift laboratory. The flicker of lightning outside cast shadows that danced across the cluttered room. His hands trembled as he mixed the final ingredients of the elixir that could change everything. A potion that promised immortality. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of rare herbs filled his lungs. This was his moment, yet doubt gnawed at him like a hungry beast. "What if it doesn't work?" he muttered, glancing at the bubbling concoction on the table. The vibrant colors swirled together, a blend of hope and desperation. He had poured everything into this, his research, his dreams, and his very soul. But the weight of rejection from the Academy of Magic and Science of Lysoria loomed heavily on his mind. "You're a fool, Thalion." He recalled the words of his peers, their laughter ringing in his ears. Chasing shadows and myths. But their scorn only fueled his ambition. He had to prove them wrong. He had to show them that he was not just another failed student. This elixir was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a chance to rewrite his destiny. With a deep breath, he steadied his hands, adding the final ingredient, a rare flower known for its mystical properties. It glowed momentarily before settling into the mixture, casting a soft light in the dim room. For a fleeting moment, a spark of hope ignited within him. "This could work," he whispered to himself, a smile creeping onto his lips. But as quickly as the hope rose, a wave of foreboding washed over him. He glanced out the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. Who else might want this power? The thought chilled him. The world was full of those who would do anything to seize immortality. Would they come for him? Thalion's heart raced as he imagined dark figures lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. He shook his head, trying to dispel the thoughts. "Focus, Thalion," he urged himself. "You cannot let fear control you." He took a step closer to the table, gazing at the elixir that shimmered with promise. It was more than just a potion. It was a key to a future where he could command respect, where he could be someone. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder shook the room, and the lights flickered. Thalion jumped, his heart pounding. He looked around, half expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, ready to take everything from him. But he was alone, or so he thought. In that moment of silence, a soft knock echoed through the room. Thalion's breath caught in his throat. Who could it be? He approached the door cautiously, his mind racing. Was it a friend or a foe? The academy had eyes everywhere, and he had made enemies with his relentless pursuit of knowledge. "Thalion!" a voice called from the other side, familiar yet filled with urgency. It was Alara, his closest friend. "Let me in. You need to see this." With a shaky hand, he opened the door. Alara stood there, drenched from the rain, her eyes wide with concern. "You won't believe what I just heard. There are whispers about your elixir. People are talking. It's not safe to stay here." Thalion's heart sank. "What do you mean?" he asked, stepping aside to let her enter. The storm raged outside, but the real tempest was brewing within him. "Lady Ellis knows," Alara said, her voice trembling. "She has plans, and they don't include you." A chill ran down Thalion's spine. Lady Ellis, the cunning noblewoman with ambitions of her own. He had heard rumors of her ruthlessness, and now, the idea that she was aware of his work sent a wave of panic through him. What lengths would she go to obtain the elixir? "Thalion, we have to leave." Ilara urged, her voice urgent. You can't let her take it from you. As he looked into her eyes, he felt a mix of fear and determination. This was not just about him anymore. It was about protecting everything he held dear. The elixir was his dream, but at what cost? Would he risk it all to keep it safe? As the storm raged on, Thalion knew that his journey was only just beginning, and the choices ahead would shape not only his destiny, but the lives of those he loved. Thalion's heart raced as he stood in the dim light of his laboratory, the flickering candles casting long shadows on the walls. The elixir, though completed, had not brought him the peace he had hoped for. Instead, it seemed to pulse with a life of its own, like a beacon calling out to those who might seek its power. The moment of triumph now felt like a prelude to disaster. His thoughts were interrupted when a soft knock echoed through the room. He turned to find Lady Ellis standing at the entrance, her elegant gown flowing behind her. Despite her beauty, Thalion felt a chill run down his spine. "Thalion," she said, a smile on her lips that did not reach her eyes. "I heard about your remarkable achievement, the elixir of immortality. I must say, it is quite impressive." "Lady Ellis," he replied cautiously, trying to mask his unease. "What brings you here?" "I come as a friend," she said, stepping closer. "You must know that I have always admired your work. Imagine what we could accomplish together." Thalion crossed his arms, feeling the weight of her gaze. "And what do you seek in return?" Ellis chuckled lightly, the sound almost melodic, yet it felt laced with something darker. "Why, nothing more than to partner with you. I could help you secure the elixir's safety, ensure that it does not fall into the wrong hands." Thalion hesitated, sensing that beneath her charm lay a hunger for power that mirrored his own. "I appreciate your offer, but I need to think about this." "Of course," Ellis replied, her smile faltering for just a moment. "But time is of the essence. You have something precious, Thalion. You must protect it." As she turned to leave, Thalion felt a weight settle in his stomach. He was not sure if he could trust her, yet he could not ignore the fact that the elixir was more than just a science project. It was a potential salvation for Ilara, his closest friend, who had fallen gravely ill just days before. The news of Ilara's sickness consumed Thalion. He rushed to her side, where she lay pale and weak, her breathing shallow. "Ilara," he whispered, gripping her hand. "I'm here." She opened her eyes slowly, a flicker of recognition sparking within them. "Thalion." "I'm so tired." "Don't say that," he urged, fighting back tears. "You have to fight. I will find a way to save you." "Promise me something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If there's a way, use the elixir." Thalion's heart sank. The very thought of using the elixir on Ilara filled him with dread. He had imagined so many scenarios, but this was the one he feared most. What if it puts you at risk? What if it draws the wrong attention? Ilara squeezed his hand weakly. "I would rather take that chance than lose hope. You have to promise me." He looked into her eyes, searching for the strength to make such a choice. "I promise, but I need to think it through. We cannot rush into this." As he left her side, the weight of the decision pressed heavily on him. He paced the room, battling his thoughts. The elixir could save her, but at what cost? The more he considered it, the more he felt trapped between his ambition and his loyalty. Later that night, Thalion stood before the elixir, its glow illuminating the darkness. He recalled Lady Ellis's words, her hidden motives swirling in his mind like shadows. He sensed that revealing the elixir could invite danger, not just for himself, but for everyone he loved. He closed his eyes, drowning out the external chaos, hoping for clarity. "What should I do?" he murmured to the empty room. Moments passed, but the silence only deepened his turmoil. Thalion knew he had to make a choice, one that would define not only his fate, but also the fate of those he cared for most. As he left the laboratory, his heart heavy with uncertainty, he understood one thing. The path ahead was fraught with shadows of betrayal, and he would have to navigate them carefully. The elixir held the promise of life, but it also carried the risk of losing everything he held dear. Thalion's heart raced as he crouched behind a tree in the secluded forest. The cool air wrapped around him like a cloak, but it did little to ease the chaos swirling in his mind. He clutched the vial of the elixir tightly, knowing that its power could change everything. Yet, the weight of his choices pressed down on him like a heavy stone. He had thought that creating the elixir would bring him glory, but now it only brought danger. The mercenaries, hired by Lady Ellis, had stormed his laboratory, their faces twisted in greed. Thalion had barely escaped, heart pounding in his chest as he fled into the woods. "Why did I let her get so close?" he muttered to himself, frustration bubbling inside him. The forest was quiet, save for the rustling leaves and the distant calls of birds. Thalion took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "I have to think clearly," he whispered, but doubt crept in like a shadow. How could he protect the elixir from those who wanted it for themselves? As he sat against the rough bark of a tree, he thought of Alara. She was still ill, and the elixir could save her. But at what cost? The idea of using the elixir for one person weighed heavily on him. "What if it changes her?" he asked aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. The thought of losing her to the elixir's dark side terrified him. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes drew his attention. Thalion's heart raced again, but it was only a small rabbit, darting away into the underbrush. He chuckled softly, realizing how on edge he had become. The forest felt like a prison and a refuge all at once. He had escaped the chaos of the outside world, yet here he was, completely alone. "Solitude may be my only safety," he sighed, the reality of his situation sinking in, but loneliness gnawed at him. He missed Alara's laughter, the warmth of friendship, and the comfort of having someone by his side. The elixir might keep him safe, but the price of that safety could be his very soul. After a moment of silence, he pulled out the vial and examined it closely. The liquid inside shimmered, reflecting the dappled sunlight. "This is more than just a potion," he murmured. "It is a choice." But what choice was he really making? Would he sacrifice everything he held dear for the sake of power? Just then, he heard voices in the distance. Panic surged through him. The mercenaries could be searching for him already. He needed to move. As he stood up, he felt a twinge of pain in his heart. He thought of Alara again. If he didn't return to her, what would happen? Thalion took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "I cannot let fear control me." He pressed the elixir closer to his chest as he began to move cautiously through the trees. Each step was a step into the unknown, and every sound made him jump. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip below the horizon. Thalion stumbled into a small clearing, where the light filtered through the leaves, casting a warm glow. It felt peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil in his heart. As he rested, he closed his eyes and imagined Alara's smile. "Thalion!" A voice suddenly called from behind him. He turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, and his heart sank. It was Lady Ellis, her eyes gleaming with a predatory spark. "You cannot hide from me. The elixir belongs to me." "No," Thalion shouted, stepping back. "I will not let you take it." Ellis laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down his spine. "You think you can protect it? You have no idea what I am capable of." Thalion's mind raced. He had to defend not just the elixir, but everything he cared about. "You will never get it, Ellis. I will fight you." She smirked, her confidence unwavering. "We shall see, Thalion. You may run, but I will always be one step behind." With that, she vanished into the shadows, leaving Thalion standing alone in the clearing, heart pounding. He realized that the true battle was not just for the elixir, but for his very soul. As the night fell around him, he understood that power came with a price, and he was not yet ready to pay it. Thalion crouched low in the shadows of the makeshift camp, the flickering firelight casting dancing shapes on the trees around him. He had found refuge among a group of outcasts, each one with their own scars and dreams. They shared his vision of using magic for good, and for the first time in days, Thalion felt a spark of hope. Yet, as he glanced around the circle of faces, he also felt the weight of isolation and fear pressing down on him. "Are you sure we can trust them?" whispered a voice from behind. It was Kale, a tall man with a weathered face. He had been skeptical of Thalion's presence since he arrived. Thalion nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "They want to help. We all want to stop Lady Ellis." "Trust is a fragile thing," Kale replied. "One wrong move, and it could all fall apart." The group had gathered to discuss their plan to confront Lady Ellis and her mercenaries. Thalion knew the risks involved, yet he felt a strange kinship with these outcasts. They understood the burden of ambition, just as he did, and they shared his desire to protect the elixir. But now, Thalion faced another dilemma. Should he reveal the elixir to them, or keep it hidden? As the night deepened, Thalion's mind drifted back to Alara. Her condition was deteriorating, and he could not shake the image of her lying frail and helpless. Just then, a soft voice broke through his thoughts. It was Mira, a kind-hearted woman with bright eyes. "Thalion, we need to know what you have," she said gently. "If we are to fight together, we must understand all our strengths." He hesitated, glancing at the others. They were all waiting for his answer. Taking a deep breath, he spoke. "I have created an elixir that can grant immortality. But it is not just a simple potion. It carries great risks." The group exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. "Great risks?" Kale repeated, his voice low. "What kind of risks? If it falls into the wrong hands, it could bring chaos. Lady Ellis wants it for her own ambitions," Thalion explained, his heart racing. "I fear that revealing it might put all of you in danger." Mira leaned closer, her eyes filled with understanding. "But what about Alara? She needs it, doesn't she?" Thalion's heart sank at the mention of her name. "She does. She sent me a message. She urged me to use the elixir to save her, despite the risks." A heavy silence fell over the group. Thalion could see the conflict in their faces. They understood the stakes, but also felt the weight of his choice. Finally, Kale spoke again. "We can help you protect it, Thalion. If we work together, we can face Ellis." "Are you willing to take that risk?" Thalion asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I am," Mira said firmly, standing tall. "We all are. We believe in what you can do." Thalion felt a rush of gratitude and hope. Perhaps he was not alone after all. Yet the fear of what lay ahead still gnawed at him. "Okay," he said, his voice gaining strength. "If we are to face Ellis, we must do it united. I will share the truth about the elixir with you, but we must protect it at all costs." As he spoke, a flicker of determination ignited in Thalion. He realized that by revealing the elixir, he was not only sharing his burden, but also forging bonds with those who believed in him. They were no longer just outcasts. They were allies, ready to fight for a common cause. That night, as Thalion lay under the stars, he felt a warmth in his chest. The ties that bound him to these people were strong, and he knew they would face whatever challenges came their way together. And yet, in the back of his mind, Alara's plea lingered like a haunting melody, reminding him of the delicate balance between hope and despair. With the dawn approaching, Thalion closed his eyes, determined to find a way to save Alara and protect the elixir, no matter the cost. Thalion stood at the entrance of the academy, his heart pounding like a drum. The air was thick with tension as he prepared to face Lady Ellis and her mercenaries. He could feel the weight of his choices pressing down on him. This was it, the moment that would change everything. As he stepped inside, the grand hall echoed with whispers. Thalion glanced around, spotting familiar faces among the crowd. Some were his friends, while others were figures of authority who had once turned their backs on him. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage he needed. "I must do this," he murmured to himself. Suddenly, Lady Ellis emerged from the shadows, a sly smile playing on her lips. "Ah, Thalion, I see you've come to join us after all." Her voice dripped with mockery, but there was an underlying seriousness in her tone. "Did you bring the elixir?" Thalion clenched his fists, feeling the vial of elixir hidden beneath his cloak. "You won't get it, Ellis. Not without a fight." His voice was steady, but inside, doubt gnawed at him. He glanced at the crowd, searching for support. His allies stood behind him, ready to fight for what they believed in. Ellis laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the air. "You think you can stop me? You're just a boy playing with forces you don't understand. Hand over the elixir, and maybe I will spare your friends." Thalion's mind raced. He remembered Alara's words, her plea for him to use the elixir. But now, in this moment, he realized he needed to show everyone the true purpose of the elixir. "I will not let you use it for your own selfish desires," he declared, his voice rising above the murmurs in the hall. "Selfish?" Ellis retorted, her eyes narrowing. "You misunderstand. Immortality is power, and power is what keeps us alive in this world. You should embrace it." Thalion shook his head. "No, immortality is not meant to be a weapon. It's about cherishing life, not hoarding it." He stepped forward, the elixir now visibly shaking in his hand. "I will show you what it means to truly live." At that moment, the tension snapped. Ellis signaled her mercenaries to attack, and chaos erupted. Thalion's allies sprang into action, casting spells and drawing weapons. The once serene academy turned into a battleground. "Thalion, behind you!" shouted one of his friends, pulling him out of the way just as a mercenary swung a sword where he had stood moments before. Thalion felt adrenaline coursing through him. He could not let fear take control. As he fought alongside his friends, Thalion's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He saw the pain in the eyes of those fighting against him, the desperation in Ellis's face as she struggled for control. "Ellis!" he shouted over the clamor. "Look around you. This is not what power should be." Ellis paused, momentarily distracted by his words. "You are naive, Thalion. Power is the only thing that matters." "No, it isn't," he replied, his voice carrying conviction. "Power is about the connections we make, the lives we touch. It's fleeting moments that define us, not endless years." The battle raged on, but Thalion felt a surge of clarity. He had to make a choice. He raised the elixir high, calling for attention. "Everyone, listen. This elixir can grant life, but it can also destroy lives. We must choose how we use it." In that instant, the fighting ceased. Both friends and foes turned to him, uncertainty etched on their faces. Thalion's heart raced as he realized the magnitude of his decision. "I will not let this elixir become a tool for destruction. I choose to destroy it, to end this madness." Before anyone could react, Thalion shattered the vial against the floor. The elixir shimmered for a brief moment before evaporating into the air. A murmur spread through the crowd, disbelief evident in their eyes. As the last traces of the elixir faded, Thalion felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had sacrificed his ambition for a greater truth. Looking at Ellis, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Regret? Longing? In the aftermath, as allies and enemies stood frozen in shock, Thalion knew his path had changed forever. He had chosen life, not immortality. And in that choice, he had found his true purpose. In the quiet aftermath of the chaotic battle, the air was thick with dust and the echoes of conflict still lingered. Thalion stood amidst the ruins of his ambition, his heart heavy with the weight of choices made and lives changed. The remnants of his laboratory lay scattered around him, a testament to his relentless pursuit of immortality. He gazed at the broken glass and spilled vials that once held the promise of eternal life. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself, the question hanging in the air like a ghost. A soft voice broke through his reverie. "Thalion?" It was Alara, her voice weak but filled with warmth. She had been brought back to their hidden refuge, her spirit still fighting despite her frail condition. Turning towards her, he felt a rush of emotions. "Alara, I thought I lost you." His voice cracked, revealing the fear that had gripped him. She smiled gently, though the pain was evident in her eyes. "You did what you had to do. You faced her. You faced them all." "But at what cost?" Thalion replied, his brow furrowed with worry. "The elixir. It's gone now. I had the chance to change everything, and I let it slip away." Alara raised a hand, silencing him. "You learned something important today, Thalion. Immortality isn't just about living forever. It's about what we leave behind." He looked around at the destruction, a hollow feeling settling in his chest. "What legacy do I leave if I choose to live forever? Will it be one of fear and ambition?" Alara shifted slightly, propping herself up with great effort. "You have to think beyond yourself. You have changed lives, Thalion, not just with the elixir, but with your heart and your choices." As he listened, Thalion began to understand. The elixir had been a symbol of his dreams, but it had also blinded him to the beauty of the present. He had been so focused on the idea of living forever that he had forgotten to cherish the moments that truly mattered. "Do you think I can still make a difference?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You already have," Alara replied. "You fought for us, for our future. And now you can help others understand the value of life, the value of living fully, even if it is just for a moment." With those words, a flicker of hope ignited within Thalion. He knelt beside her, taking her frail hands in his. "I wish I could take away your pain," he said, his eyes pleading. "You can, Thalion," she said softly, "by living for today and making the most of it. Share what you've learned. Help others find their path." The realization washed over him like a cleansing wave. The elixir may have been lost, but he still had the power to inspire. "You're right. I can guide others to see the beauty in the fleeting moments. I can help them embrace life, not escape it." He stood up, determination flooding his veins. "I will tell them about the choices we make and how those choices shape our lives. I will honor the memories of those we've lost." Alara smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That is the legacy you should strive for. Not one of immortality, but one of love and memories." As they shared a moment of silence, Thalion felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He realized that true immortality was not about living forever, but about the love shared and the marks left on the hearts of others. In that quiet space, Thalion vowed to honor his journey, to embrace the fragility of life, and to help others see their worth. He turned to Alara, his voice steady. "Together, we will create a legacy that lasts beyond any elixir. We will remind the world of the beauty in every heartbeat." And as he spoke those words, he knew he was ready to face whatever came next, not as a seeker of immortality, but as a guardian of life and love. Share this story if you believe that love can conquer even the toughest challenges. Leave a comment about how a moment of clarity has changed your perspective on life, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one. Let's spread the message of embracing each moment and living fully.